You're very welcome to Capricorn TV. Here we are in lovely Vienna. Very welcome to the show.
Welcome to you, James. Nice to have you here in Wien.
Wow, Klaus, it's a pleasure to be here. You've been on Capricorn Radio a few times. We're doing a Capricorn TV interview today. We're going to talk about some of the artifacts on the table. We're going to get into some of your background and what you do, basically. And I've been intrigued to come here to meet you, Klaus. I never thought Austria would be so beautiful. This place is full of history, Klaus. It's so, you know, from the Romans onwards. Like, I mean, everybody has come through the Danube here to Austria and Vienna. And I guess you've been a passionate guy for history for a long time, Klaus. Let us know who you are, where you come from in terms of history and your cultural exhibitions that you've been putting on around the world. Build a picture for the audience.
My name is Klaus Dona. I did many big cultural exhibitions from Austria to Japan, also one to Korea, and several Japanese exhibitions in Vienna. And on my long trips, I had a lot of time to read on the airplanes, airports, and even in the hotel rooms.
Sure.
And I read a lot of books about unexplainable things and out-of-place artifacts. And one day I had the idea, I was a big skeptic, and still I'm a skeptic, and you must be skeptical. I had the idea, why not trying to get some of these unexplainable artifacts to Vienna and display them on an exhibition. Then I started with my friend Reinhard Habeck, 1997. We did research and we could find around 350 artifacts which are displayed or in museums, because we just wanted to have artifacts from museums. And a friend of mine, a museum director, he wrote lending requests to all these museums worldwide. And out of 356 requests, we got only one agreement to be able to get this artifact for the exhibition. Then we started to do our research by ourselves. We traveled to South America, to Mexico, to North America, in Europe, and finally in 1.5 years we could find 470 very strange artifacts which we showed to the public in 2001 in the exhibition Unsolved Mysteries in Vienna.
Wow.
And since while researching, I had so many very strange, sometimes mysterious experiences that I got more and more into these fields, and since 2001 I found many more interesting places, interesting artifacts worldwide, and the search still is going on. And the more we find, the more answers, the more questions are rising up. Our history.
Do you find more research that you do as more time goes on, the more people come forward and they bring attention to you, different artifacts and different information that you wouldn't be aware of?
Yes.
The plot thickens, as they say.
Yes.
Okay, so you've gone from Japan, Ecuador, Bolivia, you've concentrated in these areas. We're going to get into some of that information because this is important. There's many mysteries there, Klaus. I wanted to talk about, you have also a new technology that you use. This is very interesting. We've spoke a few times about this, but for the listeners, I know there's some of information you're not going to be able to give away, but industrial secrets, as they say. But
yes.
But tell us a little bit what the technology can do, the benefits of archaeology, really. That's what I'm trying to enlighten to the public.
A friend of mine invented several years ago a new technology which makes him able to scan any place worldwide for archaeological sites or archaeological places. And we found already many of them, and I hope that we can be accepted by the official science, because I'm quite sure we could help the international archaeologists a lot to find really unknown cities, unknown places, and unknown archaeological sites.
Of course, places like Iraq and Egypt are covered in desert sands, and they weren't at one point. They were vibrant cities all across the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Nile. Of course, places are buried in the sand. The benefit of this technology would be perfect, really, for.
Oh, we have already several very interesting looking sites in Egypt, also in Libya, but also in several other countries.
I think Gilgamesh, the body of Gilgamesh in Egypt or in Iraq, they were searching with a new technology there because there's some sort of an iron compound that they use as well. So there's new technologies that are abound. Okay, so Stephen and Evan Strong, you've also helped use this. I have to mention these guys because this is how we got in contact. These guys have been using this technology too, and you've brought some interesting sites. And there is some hard stuff there like glyphs and rock art, but there is also stuff that you've used with the technology. And the guys would have been clueless, never heard about this at all, until this technology has been used for that.
Yes, they contacted me because they saw an interview which I did in Visoko at the site of the Bosnian pyramids, and we did a scan over the so-called Sun Pyramid in Visoko, and we could show Professor Samos Manakic that there are many tunnels inside this. For the official science, still it's just a mountain. For us, at least, there are tunnel systems inside. There is also in the center of this pyramid, there is also one room we could show to Professor Samos Manakic, and we also could detect that there are bones and precious metals inside. So I think in this case it should be a grave or a tomb inside this Sun Pyramid. In the future, I asked my friend already to do scan over the other pyramids in Visoko, and I think that there are even connections between those pyramids. And if we can help Professor Samos Manakic, we will do so. So when Stephen and Evan Strong saw my interview and that we were using a new technology, they contacted me and they asked me if we could do them a favor and check the area around the hieroglyphs in Australia, which we did, and we sent them a scan showing them that far behind the hieroglyphs there is a tunnel going into the direction of the hieroglyphs, and close before the hieroglyphs there is a room, and also in this room we detected bones and precious metal. So that when I sent them the scan, they went there the following weekend and they found a man-made wall and also an entrance into a tunnel, and definitely on the photos they sent me you can see that this is a man-made tunnel, but after a few meters it's blocked by man-made stone blocks, and I think that might be a former grave robbery trap which was activated because in 1976 in this, especially in this area, there was a very heavy earthquake. And I think this was the reason why the blocks are now blocking the entrance to the grave. But hopefully they will get the official authorization to open it, and then they could prove that the Egyptian hieroglyphs are definitely original and not a hoax from end of 19th century.
Sure. You're describing a very powerful technique, Klaus, when you can scan with a high technology and then send somebody to look, and then they come up with some answers or the evidence of what you're showing them. This is a powerful tool.
It's a very powerful tool, and we showed Stephen and Evan also an underground destroyed city, which is approximately 5 to 6 meters under the ground, under the survey. So,
wow,
a big city.
Interesting times too.
Oh, it's very interesting, and I hope they will be successful in excavating some of these places.
So, Klaus, while we're talking on technology, and I'll get to the artifacts, but while we're talking on technology, let's talk some dating techniques, because I got no problem with carbon dating. However, you usually find the carbon dating is being abused, or what I'm saying is they'll sometimes dig up a vessel and they'll look for carbon dating of material, but that doesn't mean that the artifact where the carbon dating was found was carved at the time it was dated to being buried. It could have been in existence for, especially with stone stuff. So the carbon dating is kind of used for dating techniques. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, this is a big problem in age dating. For example, one very good example for me are the Nuriages, the stone towers in Sardinia. There are over 6,000 huge stone towers. And the age dating by the official archaeologists is approximately 2,400 years. But they even found one so-called giant tomb a few meters under the sea level. That means for me, the age dating of the Sardinian Nuriages are completely wrong. Maybe they found one day some broken ceramics inside of one of these towers. They did an age dating. They found out that this material goes back about 2,400 years, and then for them, the Nuriages were built approximately at the same time. I don't agree with this.
Of course, they say that they label them as fortresses, if I'm not mistaken, and they've got one door in and out, Klaus.
They get only one door and no windows, and for me, it would be very difficult to be a protection tower if you have only one door and no windows. You cannot really self-defense yourself if you are inside.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And there's archaeoastronomy. You know, I love archaeoastronomy, but
there's a lot. There's a private researcher team in Sardinia, and they found out that this goes back at least 10,000 years.
Of course, I'm going to talk a little bit about giants. Well, I think Sardinia has a history of maybe giants being living there. I think there was some extremely large teeth found.
That's why I was very much interested in Sardinia, most of all, because there are many so-called giant domes, also made with huge stone blocks, which is quite difficult even in our days to do something like this. And as I mentioned before, they found even one giant tomb under the sea level. That means must be very, very old. And I had a meeting with some very old gentlemen in a small village, and they told me that before the Second World War, the military opened some of these giant tombs and they took away human skeletons with a size of approximately 3 meters.
I think a lot of academic scientists in Sardinia have spoken out saying that bones have been disappearing, and the giant teeth, as they're called. One guy had gone to a dentist, and the dentist had said this is 3 times the size of normal teeth. Yeah. And it went into the museum and disappeared after that. And you know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's like
there are a lot of stories like this, especially also in the United States, where you have hundreds of newspaper reports from 1870 already beginning up to 1920, 1925. And all those reports are writing exactly who was the archaeologist who was doing the excavation, where was the place, what did they find, and all of these newspapers were writing that they took out some oversized human skeletons from 2.6 meters, even more than 3 meters.
Wow.
And even there were some reports that some of these skulls had double row teeth.
Double rows.
So, and most of these reports are ending, the skeletons were brought to the Smithsonian Institution.
Wow.
But they never, their information is that they never got some skeletons like this.
I somehow think of the Indiana Jones movie with the big warehouse and rows of rows of artifacts and boxes.
Could be a reality.
It could be reality.
Yes.
Of course, Klaus, you're quite admittedly, you know, when you find artifacts that you either think are a fake or they're not consistent, you don't mind speaking out. You're not necessarily looking for the strange and the wonderful. You're quite spoken about when you find something that doesn't add up, and that's what I like about you, Klaus. You find artifacts that are interesting, and then you also find artifacts that are also, you know, problematic.
Well, there are several of them. For example, in the United States, there is one collection. I got the book from a friend of mine several years ago, and when I saw who was writing this book, he was a very famous anthropologist, high decorated. He was working for the National Geographic and Smithsonian Institution, and he was showing some pictures of very, very incredible, interesting artifacts and human-like skeletons. So when I saw this book, I tried to find out, to get in contact with him, and finally, it was not easy, but finally I could get in contact with his wife, because he passed away already, and we were invited to her house, and she showed me some of the originals, and she told me that her husband found them, etc. These are all originals, and later on I took out my special loupe, my special optical glasses, which I was using on the checkings, on the paintings after a long transport by airplane, if there is a new scratch or something like this. And I saw on two of these artifacts a kind of textile structure, but you only could see it with very special glasses. And after that, I asked the lady again, these are all originals, and she said yes. And then I asked her to put on my glasses and check the textile structure, and I told her nature is not doing like this. And finally she said yes, they are original because my husband made them. And if I wouldn't have used my special glasses, I would have 100% believed that these are original artifacts. So you have to be very, very careful in search of these artifacts, because there are very, very good fakes on the market or in private collections. And my problem is that the most important pieces are in private collections, because they are not accepted by the official science. So that means they are in private collections, and they were found by private researchers. So that's the big problem, that the official science does not want to check really those pieces and prove that these are not fakes.
I've been looking into the crystal lenses before, and I know you're familiar with the Viking lenses, and I think, not necessarily that they're fake, but they might have been robbed from another civilization, or there's a lot of problems with the Viking crystal lenses.
Yes.
It's a good example as well, I think. So, just on structures, I know you're good friends with Michael Tellinger. You've been down in South Africa. Tell us about the structures down there. I find these incredibly interesting. You can look at a lot of them on Google Earth as well. I know yourself and Michael have been down investigating. There's some incredibly strange anomalies with these places down there.
I was 3 times in South Africa, and I visited together with Michael Tellinger many of those places. There are 100,000s of huge stone circles. For the official archaeologists, these are cow storages, but many of those circles or stone circles are closed. So I would just wonder, how can cows go into a stone circle storage if there's no door? And one other thing is that most of these stone circles, you only can see a little bit over the surface. That means for me, they must go down at least 1.5 or even 2 meters under the soil, under the ground. And why the official archaeologists of South Africa are not doing some excavations? Maybe they could find very interesting artifacts, or even the big question is, if all those 100,000s of stone circles were cow storages, where are the buildings or the rest of the buildings of the people who owned the cows? I mean, Michael Tellinger is a very, very serious researcher, and he did with official scientists a lot of researches on the spot, and they found out that these stone circles are creating sound and energy and heat even.
Well, yeah.
And of course, in nighttime, the temperature inside the stone circles is higher than outside, So that means that's a reason why animals,
Flock.
they can sense much more than we human can do. They are going for sleeping inside the stone circles because it's warmer to lay down there.
It's natural.
So but that's not for me the explanation that these are cow storages.
No. Yeah, I usually find that you get like an extraordinary explanation to explain away these structures. I know you've looked at the Mongolian pyramidal structures, and there's artifacts associated with them. What's the verdict on them? Do we know exactly much more about them, or?
Yes, also a few years ago, I received a few photographs from a Chinese archaeologist from southern Mongolia, round pyramids structures. And this is the area where the Chinese archaeologists found many pieces made out of jade. Very strange artifacts, and they say that those artifacts belongs to the Hongshan culture, which goes back approximately 4,000 years. Even 4,000 years old man-made wonderful jade pieces, for me, are raising the question, how did they do the carving? Because jade, as you know, is very, very hard. And a few months ago, I got a contact from a Korean artist from Munich, and she informed me about a researcher in Korea who has hundreds of photos of other jade figurines, statues, which are from small up to 30, 40 centimeters, and all made out of jade. Beautiful, but sometimes very strange artifacts. And they are dated by this researcher and some of his colleagues at least older than 8,000 years. Older than 8,000 years, and many of them were found in tombs, in graves underground. And the strange thing is that those artifacts are painted with a black color, and they could not yet found out what kind of color they used to paint it black. And this researcher wrote a very, very interesting book with many photographs, and he sent it to me. It's in English, and he calls this culture Mago culture, and it goes concerning him definitely back in time 8,000, at least 8,000 years. So we are talking about a civilization which is older than the oldest known high civilization, 6,000 years. So it's older, at least 2 or 3 or even more thousands of years. And then again the question, what kind of culture was it? And my question was, why did they paint those artifacts with a black color? And then I remembered the Moais in Easter Island. They are also black material. And this Korean researcher thinks that those artifacts are connected with the sunken continent Lemuria or Mu.
Wow.
And if so, then it's very interesting. Easter Island, you have black statues, and you have also in parts of Korea, China, and especially Mongolia, you find also black painted statues,
wow,
which are very strange. And for me, interesting is that some of the Moais, they are now doing excavations because they found out that some of the statues are going even deeper down into the earth for several meters, and they did already some excavations. Mm-hmm. And on some of the back of those Moais, they found unknown writings or symbols. And some of those Mago culture jade figurines, they have similar writings, unknown writings or symbols on them. Mm-hmm. So there is a connection, I think so too, between Easter Island and those pieces found in Asia.
Wow.
And as I was very interested in that point, I asked my friend to do a scan over the Easter Island, and what we found is several graves, tombs, very deep underground, and always not too far away from a Moai they found. Mm. So we are trying now to get in contact with the archaeologists who are doing the excavations at the Moais, and if they believe us, and this is the biggest problem, then we could give them at least one position, and they could do scientific research and doing an excavation there.
Wow.
And Thor Heyerdahl, when he was first time on his first expedition on the Easter Island, 1956, he wrote in his book that the old people there, the indigenous people, told him that long time ago they buried the kings on their island. And that means for me, kings, first of all, it would be interesting what kind of skeletons could we find in the tombs. But what my friend also detected is precious stones, bones, and precious material. And you know, James, that there is no mining of gold mining or precious stone mining on the Easter Island.
Anyway.
So the question would be where those material came from. And if the old people already said to Thor Heyerdahl 1956 that they buried the kings long time ago, for me that would be a good point to have precious material and precious stone in the same tombs. And that could be one of the final approval that Easter Island is a rest of the sunken continent Lemuria or Mu in the Pacific Ocean.
I have a first edition of the Kondiki expedition. I've looked at the routes in and out of Easter Island. A lot of people think maybe from South America to Easter Island is the most obvious one, but I definitely favour the Asia route into Easter Island and then maybe to South America. But whatever's going on in Easter Island, it's definitely incredibly interesting. It's hinting at these guys coming from totally somewhere else with pre-culture from somewhere else, dynasty of kings or whatever, or artifacts or knowledge or whatever you want to look at it. These guys came from somewhere else with an existing culture and got stranded on the island, I think, maybe.
Or it could be the former graveyard of the kings of Mu.
Yeah. While we're in Asia and talking artifacts, I got to talk about the Joe Man. I was in the British Museum before I came to Austria here, and I seen a little Joe Man figurine. The ceramics, these guys are incredibly interesting. I mean, these things go back a long time. This is academically proven to got 10,000 BC? 10,000?
The Choman.
Yeah.
No, the Choman culture is dated back 6,000 years.
6,000.
And the strange thing is that the oldest pre-Columbian culture, which did ceramics, is the Valdivia culture, which also goes back 6,000 years. And I saw vases or pots from Choman culture and also from Valdivia culture. And if you put those pots or vases together, you cannot find the difference.
Wow.
And the next point, which might have been a connection between Japan and South America, are the stone monuments, because you know Sacsayhuaman, Pumapunku, all these places with the very huge stone blocks buildings, and the Yonaguni.
Wow.
Yonaguni, the very huge man-made stone structure under the sea level in Iseki Island, which is the southeast Japanese island, very close to Taiwan. And Professor Masaaki Kimura, he is doing the undersea research there already since many years. Still, Yonaguni is not accepted full by the official archaeologists, because some of them are still saying that this is a natural formation, which is completely ununderstandable for me. If you see all those photos Professor Masaaki Kimura did, and he told me that he found even other stone structures, which are definitely man-made, and he wrote the book, The Sunken Continent Mu. And in this book, he wrote that he thinks, because of his research, from the northeast Japanese, former Japanese island, the Sakhalin Islands, which are now belonging to Russia, until far down after Taiwan that there was once a long continent, which he thinks that could have been moved. That's why he wrote the book. And when I presented 2001 several artifacts from La Mana in Ecuador, there is one stone, it's 350 kilo granite stone, quartz granite, and you have an encarving on this stone of the world map, and you can see countries like Italy, Greek, the Mediterranean. There is one natural quartz line.
A vein, yeah, the vein runs through.
A vein through, and in the Middle East you have an eye inlay, and then the natural quartz line passes the Mediterranean, passes the Atlantic Ocean, and there you have one continent on this stone map, which does not exist in our days, which could be the so-called mystical continent Atlantis. And then it passes South America, Venezuela, going down to Ecuador, and at the Bay of Guayaquil, there's another inlay going up to north, and there's a round inlay, and this is the place where all this material was found. But then the quartz line is passing the Pacific Ocean, and is passing where today is Japan. And on this stone map, you have from the northeast Japanese island until far down after Taiwan, you have already one continent carved. It would fit exactly the research of Professor Masaaki Kimura. So that means this stone world map must be at least older than 10,000 years. But then the big question is raising up. Who could have been able to do a quite precise stone world map on a granite stone, showing two continents which do not exist or not in this style in our days?
Wow. Totally fascinating. I got to talk about Jack Churchward's and James Churchward as well, and the Nikal tablets of India. This is incredibly fascinating. I've had Jack on the show, talking about his grandfather's work, and fascinating, these Nikal tablets. Let's talk a little bit this, because this ties in with me as well.
Yes, James Churchward, for me, did a wonderful and great research, which also his great-grandson Jack is doing. I'm in contact with him too. And that's why I try to get also an approval of the existence of the continent Mu, that once it definitely existed. I am now in contact with an American lady. She was, I think, over 20 years in Nan Madol.
Wow.
She did a lot of research, and she is now writing a book. I'm waiting to get this book, but she sent me already some articles of her book, and she also sent me some photographs of stone carvings with symbols, and many of those symbols I saw already in the book of James Churchward.
Wow.
So that's one point, the so-called Nakal plates, as he explained. And I'm still researching on the ceramic or terracotta plates, which were found at the end of 20th century by William Niven. William Niven was a British mineralogist living in United States, and he was searching for new minerals in Mexico. And in 1897, he found in the high valley of Mexico, he found under three soils, three different civilizations, and the most advanced was the deepest one. And many of those jade figurines, for example, they had Asian faces.
Wow.
And over this third underground finding area, there was volcano ash, and the last big volcano explosion was about at least 12,000 years ago. So we are talking here also again about a very old, high advanced civilization. And William Niven found over 3,000 plates with symbols which were exactly the same like James Churchward saw on the Nakal plates in India. So again, another point that we are talking about sunken continents.
It's fascinating because I know alternative researchers like yourself, Klaus, are out there tying things together, getting connections, and do you find it hard to open dialogue with institutions, or maybe you open dialogue but the dialogue ends pretty quick, maybe?
This is a problem because you cannot talk with a specialist of pre-Columbian culture about Egyptian culture and vice versa. But I think there are so many similarities. And for me, every artifact is a kind of puzzle. And the more puzzles we get together, maybe one day we can definitely make a final picture.
We have a cobra artifact, if I remember correctly. The last time we spoke, there's a cobra artifact in South America somewhere.
This is from the same place. The world stone map was found. It was 1984. Engineer Sotomayor, he was working for a British mining company in a small village called La Mana in Ecuador, and they did drillings and excavation for gold. They were searching for gold. And suddenly he found one underground tunnel, and in this tunnel he found over 300 artifacts, and most of them do not connect any known pre-Columbian culture. And there was also, for example, a jade cobra head with 7 points on the left side, right side, and that means could be a connection to the Asian chakras.
Chakra points,
to the chakra points. And there were also 33 lines on the bottom of the head of the cobra head.
Wow.
So cobras never existed in South America, so that's one of the conclusions, that those species are fraud. But for me, they are original.
Is there 33 vertebrae in the neck, at the back? Is that right?
No. Also on the...
Or the chest, is it?
On the chest.
Yeah. Wow.
And 7 and 33 are very...
important numbers.
Yes.
To symbologists.
Yes.
Tell me about Franco Crespi and the plates, because this is a fascinating story. This has got mystery all over it, Klaus.
Father Crespi, yes. Father Crespi was Italian-born priest, working many years in Ecuador as a missionary with the indigenous tribes in the jungle area, Amazon area, and there are also the famous Cuevas de los Tallos. It's a huge underground tunnel system. And Juan Moritz, he was Hungarian, but grown up in Argentina, and he did a lot of research in Ecuador. And he made several reports that he found in the Cuevas de los Tallos a library, a metal library with unknown writings and unknown symbols. Father Crespi, he got many times from the indigenous people some gifts because of his help. He helped the people a lot, and they loved him. And many times they brought him pieces they found on their territory. Wow. So in his collection there were hundreds of metal plates, most of them a kind of copper with unknown writings, unknown symbols, and some of them even in stone. And some of these unknown writings we found in his collection, in some of the pieces of his former collection. We found the same unknown writing in Colombia on stone artifacts. We found the same unknown writings, symbols on pieces which I show you later here from the so-called Burroughs Cave in the United States. We found the same writing in France, in Glosel. 1924, a farmer found on his ground over 300 artifacts, and many of them with this unknown writing, but still the collection of Glosel is not accepted as official original artifacts. Age dating went back even 12,000 years. Wow. On bones, age dating. So we found the same writing in Calabria in Italy, in Malta, in Turkmenistan, and even in Australia. There was once at least a global civilization or a global connection, a civilization which had a global connection. And all of these artifacts are not accepted as originals by the official science, because for them it is ununderstandable that a long time ago there lived already a global civilization on Earth.
Just for the listeners, there's also the cocaine and tobacco mummies, and they found this in the DNA of the hair of mummies, and it was a German lady, I believe, in the 90s came up with this evidence. And
yes, and what happened? She made a report, and immediately they checked her former life, and they found out that she was living with other students together, and she was smoking some stuff in the past, and immediately her career was destroyed. But years later, Russian scientists confirmed that mummy textiles, that they found in Egyptian mummy textiles coca and tobacco.
Indigenous to South America only.
Yes.
So we have right there, like, scientific data and analysis to explain it. And I still find it crazy today that this is largely ignored. I think it was like you asked, basically, never any apology given. I think they just basically said rudimentary contact, basic contact.
Yes.
And that was it, brushed away as basic contact. And, you know, there should be like a whole song and dance about this, but, we also have Sumerian writing in Bolivia. Tell us a little bit about this.
I beg your pardon?
Sumerian writing in Bolivia.
Oh yeah, they found, already several years ago, they found some ceramics with Sumerian writing. But for me the question is, who used them first? Sumerians or the people in Bolivia? And concerning age, for me, the Bolivian age, or the age of Bolivian culture, for me personally, that's my personal thinking, and also of many other people, that Bolivian history is going far behind this time. So the question is still, who used them first? Because the unknown writing, which we found on many stones worldwide, there was one man living in Germany, Professor Kurt Schildmann. He was the president of the German Linguistic Society. He said he did not translate this writing. He said he could decipher this writing. And he called this writing pre-Sanskrit, because he said for him this writing is older than the oldest known writing, the pre-Sanskrit, the Sanskrit. And he also found out that this writing has a connection with the Easter Island writing and with the writing of the Indus Valley from Mohenjo-Daro and this area. So, you know that we have one story, for example, in the Bible. It says, until they built the Tower of Babel, they all spoke one language. So maybe this was the first writing at the beginning, and some of them used some rune style letters, some other used some Greek alphabetic style letters. So maybe it was the real first writing, and then it spread. It was spreading in other writings. Could be, but I think there is a lot still to do for the experts on ancient writings.
For me, Bolivia, definitely, probably 12,000 to 15,000 years. Arthur Poznański, the Polish engineer, he spent a lot of time at the Kalasasi temple, and
he was not a Polish, he was German.
German, sorry, my mistake.
Was a German.
He's often referred to as being Polish, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe his ancestors.
Maybe a Polish name living in Germany, perhaps.
Could be.
Wow.
But he spent nearly his whole. He was a good businessman, and he spent a lot of his time on conservation of many places in Bolivia, because you know that they took many of the stones for street construction or for building construction, but he did a lot to preserve. this area.
I think he had the Kalasasi temple dated about 17,000 years old, making it 15,000 BC, but only because of the accuracy of his measurements. It might be refined to maybe 15, 13, but I mean...
That would be also
still
very old.
Still, even at the earliest date, it's looking at about 12, 13,000 years old.
And even in Bolivia, we have places, for example, close to the Salar de Uyuni. That's the biggest salt lake worldwide. And for me, that's also a very interesting place. Why? There is in 4,000 meter, there is the biggest salt lake on Earth. But the surrounding areas, the surrounding mountains, do not have really big salt areas.
Wow.
So where the salt comes from. And the next one is the Salar Popo and also the Lake Titicaca. And Lake Titicaca still has, for example, seahorses.
Yeah, the animals.
Which are living in the sea. Wow. And some scientists are thinking that the whole Andes were raising up.
A lot quicker than maybe we're told.
But for me, another possibility could be that there once in the past was a pole shift, and through this pole shift, there could have been a tsunami worldwide, which was higher up to even 3,000 meters. And if so, then it would be an explanation how comes salt water to 4,000 meters height. But then the next question is, in 4,000 meters, the days are not that hot and the nights are quite cold. So how long would it take to
dry the
salt in 4,000 meters? So then we would talk about thousands and thousands of years.
Wow. Yeah, I favour a pole shift more than anything. I think there's a lot of you had Charles Hapgood do a lot of research on that, backed by Einstein as well. So.
Yes.
And there's a lot of serious minds have given the pole shift theory a good look at, haven't they, Klaus? So,
yeah.
Talk about Sierra Leone, because you've talked about these statues in Sierra Leone. There's quite a number of statues found there.
In Sierra Leone, yes. First information I received through Adriano Forgione. He is the publisher of an archaeological magazine, Phoenix, in Italy. He informed me about Professor Pittoni. Professor Pittoni was a great geologist, and he was working worldwide in the past, and also he was working in Sierra Leone for an Italian company for diamond excavations. And he was interested always in legends and the mythology of each country where he was working. And he heard the story there that Allah, they are Muslims there, that Allah got angry on some of his angels and he petrified them and he threw them to earth. He took the sky, petrified it, threw it to the earth, and he also took the stars and threw them to the earth. And while the diamond excavation there, he found always in a certain deepness, in different deepness, they excavated some stone figurines. Some of them made out by sandstone, and some of them made out by granite. Very wonderful statues, but very strange ones. And as he passed away, unfortunately, as he was a geologist, he always took some organic material close to the finding of each of the stone statues. And he found out that the newest made ones were dating up to about 2,500, 3,000 meters. And the oldest one, and also for me the most interesting one, was made out by sandstone. It looks, for me, it's about this size, and it looks like a T-Rex.
Wow.
From
Jurassic.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the strange thing was, the age dating is approximately on organic material which was found together with this statue, 17,000 years. And when Professor Pittoni found this figurine, it made a strange noise, so there must have been something inside. So he did X-ray from all sides of this statue, and he saw a hollow room inside with a round ball, but he didn't know what this ball is. And he also could see on the X-ray that once there was an entrance here, and it was closed, on the front, where the stomach is, and it was closed so perfectly that from the surface you couldn't see that there once was an entrance. But through the X-ray, you could see exactly, and he asked a specialist to open him exactly here, and he took out this former closing block piece, and inside was a metal piece. And when we got these artifacts from him for our exhibition 2001, I brought the piece to the Natural Historical Museum in Vienna to do a material check on the stone, sandstone, and on the metal. And the professor called me next day and he said, Mr. Dona, I think somebody did a bad joke on you. I said, why? She said, because the precise metal ball is chromatical steel. And chromatical steel was found first by an Austrian, 1904 or 1906.
Turn of the century, yeah.
Yes. So she said, somebody did a bad joke on you. So I called Professor Pittoni and he laughed and he said, look, I don't open a very old statue just because it makes a strange noise. We did the X-rays and he sent me all the X-rays from all the sides and you could see that this ball was already inside before the opening of it. So 17,000 years chromatical steel. That's another big question to the science. Who could have been able to do some material which we found out first time in the last century?
Wow, yeah. I've had the pleasure of being to the Natural History Museum in Vienna. What an awesome collection of materials, metals, and, these guys would be the experts. So, but chromatical steel, I think we've had examples of aluminium in China, which has been, not existing in any known period. Aluminium, 18th century, 1824 or something.
Yeah. But again, coming back to the pieces, to the nomolis, some of these nomolis, they are even this size and very strange, precise made. For example, you see one black African sitting on an elephant. If you would compare the size of the elephant and the size of the person sitting on it, we raise again up to approximately 6-7 meters. Maybe it's connected with former giants. Could be. You have in Ireland, you have the story about a legend about a black giant was coming to Ireland. I don't know if you know this.
No, I do.
I tried to find it for you in my files.
Yeah.
And some of those statues, they have the face of a reptile and the body of human. That's again a very interesting thing. And the next thing is connected with the legend of the petrified sky. He also found, always in different layers, he found sky blue rocks from small pieces until big pieces. And he gave us also some of these rocks for our exhibition. It's really a wonderful sky blue color. And we did also material check at the Natural Historical Museum. And the result is that it is not a normal stone. It is man-made.
Ceramics?
No, it's not ceramic. It looks like a stone, like a kalk stone.
Wow.
But a wonderful blue color.
Wow.
And it was not able yet to find out what kind of color they used to make these blue stones.
Crazy.
So the legend of the petrified sky, man-made blue stones, the man-made stone statues, and the skies says the diamonds are the petrified skies. So a very interesting legend, but what kind of civilization did all those pieces? Is a big question.
Well, chromatic steel is, as you say, is like employing high science, high technology, metallurgy.
Yes.
So, wow, incredibly interesting. Klaus, I'm going to talk about one more artifact, and I'm going to take a break, and we're going to look at these artifacts after the break. And I just want to talk about this. Well, a couple of artifacts. The pyramid with this all-seeing eye and the layers. You've shown this on black light before.
That's again one of the pieces from La Mana, from Ecuador.
Incredibly interesting, this, Klaus. Tell us about this.
Yes, it's 27 centimeters high, the pyramid. It has 13 steps. And an eye inlay. The color of the stone eye inlay is gray, but when you put ultraviolet light on it, the eye looks very, very brightly, and it looks like the astronomers did some photos of the so-called the Eye of God in a star constellation, another constellation, and it looks a little bit like this, so very strange. And on the bottom of this small pyramid, you have exactly the same writings like we found worldwide on stones, and the translation by Professor Schildmann was the Son of the Creator comes. And you have also, in little gold plates inlay, the Orion constellation on the bottom of this pyramid.
Wow. Always the Orion constellation slipping in.
Always the Orion constellation, or the Pleiades.
Pleiades, Orion, and Sirius. You talk about these 12 cups. There's like a cup with 12 little baby ones on.
That's also one. That's
the same artifacts.
These were also found in the same underground cave in Ecuador, in La Mana. So there's one big jade cup, which has a perfect star constellation inlay, or in different colors. And also these stars, if you put ultraviolet light on it, they are shining very brightly. And the strange thing on the big cup is that inside the cup is very magnetical. Outside, nearly nothing. Only there are 3 stars building a triangle. Inside, in the center of this triangle, it's also very magnetical. And I talked with many geologists, and they said it's impossible if a jade cup includes some iron material, it must be same magnetical from both sides. But this big cup is only inside very magnetical, and outside nearly nothing, only in the center of these 3
Doesn't make
stars.
sense.
And there are also 12 little cups, and you can see that they are handmade. And on each cup is a kind of number which looks like the Mayan numbers, but it's a little bit different. And you can see that each of the little cup has a little different size. But we fill them up completely with water, and then carefully we put the little cup of water inside the big cup. And finally, when you finish with the 12th one, the big cup is again completely precise, filled with water. So how did they do that?
Wow.
Very, very, very
clever
work.
Wow. Employing good knowledge of weights, measures, and volume, and you know.
And another very interesting piece from the same finding is a hard form stone. The color of the stone is brown, and suddenly in the center of the hard form, the color of the stone changes to black, and it's a little bit damaged, but you can see a human face with long hair, with closed eyes, and with a long beard. And many people to whom I showed big pictures of this piece, they immediately said, it looks like the Shroud of Turin, the face of Jesus Christ. So I would say now we have one big cup and we have 12 little cups. We have one hard form stone with a face which looks like the face of Jesus Christ on the Shroud of Turin. Then you have one big stone block with a world map showing two continents which do not exist or not existing in this form in our days. And on this world stone map, you have an eye inlay in the Middle East, approximately where there is Israel, Syria in this area. So if I would like to make a sensational story, but not correct, I would say maybe this is the Graal from Jesus, the Holy Grail, and because you have 12 little cups, you have one big cup, you have a hard form stone with a face which looks like the Shroud of Turin. But for me, those artifacts are older than at least 12,000 years.
Sure.
So what kind of connection could be, could not be, I don't know.
Klaus, just show the audience a copy of your DVD if people want to get a copy.
Many people always ask me if I don't have a book. But unfortunately, I cannot spend 5-6 months sitting
writing
on the computer and writing the book. I have tons of material. One day, when I'm getting a little bit more quiet, I will write a book. But a friend of mine did a DVD with many of these strange artifacts and also some explanations. And it's called Klaus Dona Chronicles. And soon I think we try to do a second
Part
one.
2.
But we have to go to some of the places because the most interesting pieces are in South America and even in Europe in some places. So there's a lot to do still. Okay.
And where can we get a copy of that on your website, Klaus?
You can get a copy on Amazon.
And what is your website? Unsolved?
My website is unsolved-mysteries.info.
Okay, beautiful.
But I have to say also the website is already old, I think 8 years, and some friends offered me to help me to do me a new one with many of the new informations.
Wow. We're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and look at these wonderful, interesting artifacts. We're going to talk giants and crystal skulls and Luddite tools and the Saqqara bird, of course, and the genetic disc, which I've been saving. So I'll come back in just a moment, Klaus, and we'll have a little break.
Yeah.
Hi Klaus, you're very welcome back to Capricorn TV. Here we are again, and we're going to talk about the artifacts we've been looking at on the table. I think as an anthropomorphic discussion, the skull and the bones is probably something the most interesting to jump into. We were talking about giants earlier.
Yeah.
We have two incredible bones sitting on the table, which I've had the previous examination of before the show, and start with the heel bone. I think this is incredible, Klaus.
Yeah, several years ago, I saw on a Brazilian website an information about Father Carlos Vaca, a priest from Ecuador, that he found 1964 the broken bones of a human giant with the size of 7.6 meter. So I thought, I had the feeling there is something reality behind this information, because you know there's a lot of wrong information also on internet. So I tried to get a contact with Father Carlos Vaca. It took me several years, and on one of my trips to Ecuador, we visited the province Loja, because in the report there was only written that Father Carlos Vaca from Loja, and I didn't know at that time that Loja is a province and also the capital city. So we went to Loja, and we arrived late in the evening. I didn't find the hotel which I was supposed to stay, so we just stopped at the place. And after taking a shower, I went to the lobby and I asked the lady there if she knows a Father Carlos Vaca. And she said no, she doesn't know, but there is an office from the Franciscan church next to the church, and they have all the data from all the priests in Ecuador. So I went next morning 9 o'clock there, and we asked if they can tell us where I can find Father Carlos Vaca. The lady there, she didn't know the name, so I thought maybe it was a hoax on the internet. But she said she will search for it, and after a while she came back and she said, yes, she found him. But she has to inform us that he passed away exactly 1 month before.
Oh my God.
So I asked her if she knows where he was working, and she said, yeah, he worked the last years in the hospital in Locher. So we went there, and I asked if they can give me some information about Father Carlos Vaca. And no coincidence, the man there said, oh, there were about 50 taxis outside, but he looked and he said, the taxi driver from the first car, every day he brought Father Carlos back to his home. Wow. So I just entered to the taxi and I said, please bring me to the house of Father Carlos Vaca, and he brought us there. And his niece, his brother's daughter, she was living there with her family, and this was also the homestay for Father Carlos Vaca. And she said yes. She invited us for a coffee, and she told us that her uncle passed away a month ago. And then she showed us a lot of bones which he found 1964 on a place which is called in the indigenous, in the Aymara language since ever, the Cemetery of the Giants. It's a very, very tiny valley in the south of the province Locher. And one night there was a heavy thunderstorm, and a part of this so-called Cemetery of the Giants was broken down. And next morning they saw a lot of broken bones, but very big ones. And they called immediately Father Carlos Vaca that he should look at the bones, and he came and he inspected them, and he definitely identified them as human bones. And this human must have been the size, must have had the size of 7.6 meters. So I asked them if I can bring some of the bones for research to Vienna. One of them could be identified, this one, as a human heel bone, but there even some experts did a comparison with normal human heel bone and this one. They said it looks exactly the same, but it's impossible because this is 5 times bigger.
5 times bigger.
And also this bone was identified, it looks like a human os occipitale, which we have too under our skull, that we are able to move the
So we rotate the skull balanced on these two bones.
Also 5 times bigger. But we also found a documentation from Chiesa de Leon. He was a historian for the conquistadors, and he wrote 1573, I think it was. He wrote in one of his documentation, today we found at the coast of Esmeraldas, which is the Pacific Ocean Ecuadorian coast, we found today several human skeletons. They were 5 times bigger than we were. Wow. So if you calculate that the Spanish guy at this time was about 150, 160 centimeters, multiply 5, you reach over 7.5 meters. And an interesting photo I received from Manuel, he is an Ecuadorian researcher, and he went several times into the Cuevas de los Tallos, which I mentioned before, the huge underground tunnel system in Ecuador. And he sent me a picture of a big hole and a huge entrance from the Cuevas de los Tallos. And when I saw the picture, I saw on the right side of the entrance a huge man or human. So I called him on Skype and said, Manuel, is the right person next to the door, is this a man from the expedition? And he was laughing. He said, no, this is a wall painting, and the little black thing next to it, that's my friend, just staying next to the wall painting.
Wow.
And he said, this wall painting, a human, is 7.5 meters tall. So if you see this picture, and you can imagine normal people would never ever have been able to do such a huge hall with huge entrance in the Cuevas de los Tallos. So that means it's connected with the real giants.
Wow, incredibly interesting, Klaus. I've had the pleasure of holding this skull. If you show that to the audience, Klaus, it's my hands are quite big, but it does fit in the palm of the hand of myself anyway. And it's quite heavy too. It's made of quartz. Maybe just describe it and the story of how you came to possess it as well.
3 years ago, I had a conference in Germany with together with Nassim Haramein, the famous physicist from Hawaii.
Right.
And I know him already since 2010, so we are good friends, and he brought me this skull and said, I can keep the skull here, and if I do one day again an exhibition, I can display this skull. And he told me the story. A young man gave him this skull, and the story says that all the former owners who bought this skull got very bad luck, and the young guy bought this skull, and after 1 month, his fiancée passed away, so he gave this skull to Nassim, and he said he doesn't want to have this skull anymore. But of course, James, you can imagine when he told me the story,
sure.
Immediately I told Nassim, look, Nassim, I don't want to keep this, I don't want to own this skull.
Yeah.
I just keep it here.
Custody.
And we promise that whenever we find out where this skull belongs, we will bring him back. Because I think it's part of a grave robbery. That's why the real owners, they bought it, had a bad luck. And the skull itself has an encarving on top, which shows Quetzalcoatl, the feathered god. And also it has a crystallization here.
Yes.
Which I asked several geologists, and they told me this skull must have been long time under the earth. And I brought this skull to Paris to a conference where also Humboldt's man, the famous elders of the Mayan, was there. And in the evening, when I showed him this skull, he was very much impressed, and he meditated about 15 minutes. And then he told me, this is one of the most important skulls on Earth, and this skull is older than 10,000 years, which means the geologists are right if they say he must have been many thousands of years under the ground. And this skull has a wonderful energy, that's what people tell me. One day I had a friend of mine coming here, he is one of the 3 European Zen masters, and he is very sensitive, feeling man, and he was sitting here in this room, and suddenly he started nipping with his feet, and I thought he's a little bit nervous, and suddenly he asked me, Klaus, what do you have in your house? And I said, what shall I have in my house? He said, you have something with a very strong energy, I can feel it. I said, I don't have anything. And suddenly I remembered maybe the skull. So I went up to my sleeping room, because he is in my sleeping room just looking to my bed. So I brought him out of the room, and he couldn't see it yet, but he said, yeah, that's it. I feel the energy is getting stronger. So when I brought the skull down here, he just said, it's incredible, wonderful, but very strong energy. He asked me, do you keep this skull at home? I said, yeah, why? It's in my sleeping room. He said, no, you are kidding. I couldn't sleep even 1 second with this skull in my room. I don't feel energy. But people who are sensitive, they can feel that this skull is really something special.
Wow.
And I like him, and he didn't bring me bad luck.
No,
He's
nothing.
a good friend of mine. And the promise stays, whenever someone can really help me to find out where he belongs, then he will go back.
There's beautiful quartz veins in it, and the eyes are made of jade, is that correct?
Yes, Humboldt's man also told me that this is the same jade they found in the tomb of Pacal in Mexico.
In Palenque?
Yes.
Wow. Because you've looked at many skulls, haven't you, Klaus? You've been.
Oh yeah, I saw many of them. And I had experiences with skulls, because I was always skeptical when some people told me the skulls, they have some informations and everything. I thought could be, could not be. And one day in Switzerland, when we had the exhibition 2004, a Russian shaman, a great lady called Nina, she went there and she asked if she can go with me after closing through the exhibition, and she can give me some more information on some of the artifacts. which she did. And, you know, in an exhibition, you cannot write a long story to each artifact.
Sure.
You just compress it. But she could tell me a lot of things which I knew already, but which were not on display. So I knew that this lady is really something special. Wow. And then we ended up in front of the crystal skulls. We presented 6 very old original crystal skulls in the exhibition. And there was one jade skull from Mongolia, this size. And in front of this skull, she went into meditation. Then she spoke in a language which I never heard before. And then she spoke in Russian to the translator, and the translator told me she got 2 informations. The first information is for me. She said, in the near future, you will excavate many things worldwide, but you have to leave the earth after excavation in a good condition. At this time, James, I'm not an archaeologist. I had no idea of doing any time anywhere, any excavation. But you know, with the new technology now, we are ready to start excavations. And the second most important information was, in a few days, a big wave will kill 100,000s of people. And you remember this was in November 2004, tsunami. And on 26th of December was the big tsunami in Southeast Asia.
Sure.
So from that moment on, I'm quite sure that there are informations in skulls. And a friend of mine in Germany, he found, with friends, he found one wood box, covered with leather box. On the leather box was written Otto Rahn. Otto Rahn was a German archaeologist who worked for the German Reich, for
Himmler?
For Himmler. He worked for the SS. He did researches, a lot of researches in Rennes-le-Château and in Montségur, because they were searching for the Holy Grail and for the informations from the Knight Templars and the Katara. And also they found a transport list of the last train from Berlin to Prague. And on this transport list was this crystal skull. It's a clear crystal skull, 9.2 kilo, very heavy.
Wow.
And it was said owner Heinrich Himmler. That means that this skull was, the last owner of this skull was Himmler from the SS. And I brought this skull to Vienna, and the most famous expert on crystal work, Dr. Rudolf Distelberger, he did a check on this skull. It was just 1 month before he passed away, but as we were very good friends, he did me a check on this skull, and he said the crystal is not from South America, it's European crystal, and it's old handmade. And I think, therefore, that this skull was really in the ownership of the Knight Templars and was found by Otto Rahn because it was written his name on the letterbox. And my friend and 2 of his friends, technicians, they did some tests with this clear crystal skull. And he informed me, and he said if he would have seen it only by himself, he would have thought that he has a illusion. But what they saw, they worked with laser beams and with sound. And he said suddenly they could see 3-dimensional. A man riding on a camel coming to their direction, then the man was looking at them, he turned around and disappeared, and the second they could see, also 3-dimensional, like holography, a lady sleeping, and the lady was opening the eyes, looked shocked at them, and then the picture disappeared also. That means, that's another sign for me, that in these, or some of these crystal skulls, there are really a lot of information stored, but we don't know yet how to take these informations. But soon, when I have time to see my friend, they will do another test that I can be there, and maybe the same thing happens, something we can find out. It's very, very interesting.
It's exciting. As an engineer, I love this next one, the Saqqara board. Do you have a model of the Saqqara board?
Yes, this I got from Egypt for our exhibition. Khalil, Mr. Khalil, his father found this piece in the museum, and he discovered that it looks exactly like a plane, like a how you call the planes without engine.
Gliders, yeah.
Like a slider, yeah. And if you look at this, it's exactly the same size. It's a perfect replica, even from the same balsa wood. And if you see, a bird never would have his tail like this. He wouldn't be able to fly. And also the wings, if you see, it's really aerodynamic. So this is one of the pieces really in Egypt, which for me looks like...
It's a good example of aeronautical knowledge.
Yeah.
Aeronautical knowledge.
There are many others in South America, for example, at the Gold Museum in Bogota, little pieces which are also looking like airplanes, and German inventors, they did precise big models from the small pieces, and with an engine, with a motor, and they even could make turns and everything like a perfect airplane. Yeah. So still there are a lot of things we have to discover, I think.
I want to talk about the genetic disc next. It's wonderful piece. Again, a replica.
This is a perfect replica. The original is back at the owner's place, Professor Gutierrez, in Bogota in Colombia.
Originally it's made out of Luddite.
It's made out of Luddite, and I had this piece and also the little ones at the Natural Historical Museum at the Mineralogical Department for material check. It's proved it's Luddite. It's proved. And Dr. Distelberger, he went with me there, and he said, after checking the material, he said he is happy to be here to see that the test was done, and it's definitely Luddite, because when he checked these pieces very carefully, especially the little ones, which are designed in a perfect, most perfect way, he said he cannot tell me when these pieces were made. He cannot tell me who made it, and especially he cannot tell me how they made it. But what he could tell me is, I can tell you that we are not able to do from the same material the same pieces, even with our high technology. And the interesting thing is these pieces were found already at the end of 1960, beginning of 1970. Wow. Especially this one was found by street working outside Bogota, underground. And the interesting thing is that you have on this, we call it genetical disc, you have here human egg without and human egg with spermia, and you have here spermias. That means you can see here things which you cannot see with your own eyes. You need microscope.
Wow.
So whoever did these things, we don't know. But all these pieces, and especially also on the other side here, you can see the fetus. Looks like human fetus. Embryos. Yeah. But the strange thing for me is, you have here male and female, and also you have here male, female, and children. For me, the question is, if someone is able to do such a masterpiece, why he is building the human with very wide heads, with big eyes, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, open question.
Strange.
This material, the disc itself is precise, and I had this disc in original at the exhibition in Switzerland, and Nina, also the Russian shaman, asked me if she would be able to hold this in her hand. So we opened the case and I gave it to her, and then she was meditating about at least 20 minutes. She started sweating. And when she came out of the meditation, she told me this is the gene code of the earth, and there are so many informations inside this disc that she alone is not able to get this information. She would need at least 4 or 5 like her, and then they might be able to get informations out of this disk. This is one thing, and the other little pieces.
Let's have a look at the
here. For example, this one, the lyddite is very hard. It's close to the hardness of granite.
Wow,
but
that's like 9 out of 10 on the Moscow.
It is like the structure is partly like leaves, so it breaks very easily. So Dr. Distelberger told me, look at this form. It's impossible to do out of the same material, but the design is so precise. If you hold it like this, you can get any little point directly because it is like
perfectly.
Your own fingers. And I think these pieces were made for medical
use
work.
Wow.
Precise
They
design.
fit perfectly into finger and thumb. I can see
It
that.
fits any hand, any size.
Yeah.
If a small hand, if a big hand, it always fits exactly your hand. I mean, these are great pieces. And
I've seen pieces in Egypt that are incredibly interesting where they use this type of stone like schist that fractures easily, but they create the most wonderful shapes and forms. And, you know, as in engineering and science, we don't know how to do that. You know, it's like it was either soft at one point and melted, or it's like if it was mala or metal or something, you could form the shape easy. But when it's done in stone,
that's a big question. How did they do it? Because you can see that mostly it's exactly the same size, but on this end here, some of the material was breaking away, but the master could finalize the work. And you can see also here that very thin parts were breaking away. That's because of the structure of the material.
The layers,
A very, very interesting, one of the most interesting pieces I ever saw.
Yeah. I know in Egypt they have schist vases that have a very small neck and inside is hollow, and they don't know how to carve them because you can't carve from the inside if you can't get into it. So in the same type of the shale or the schist fractures really easy. Very hard, but fractures easy. So you've got some writing tablets as well. Let's have a look
these
at
are the so-called stones, which I said before, with this unknown writing, which we found really all over the world. And these stones are from the so-called Burroughs Cave in Illinois, in United States. A man found an underground tunnel, and he took out many of these stones. Russell Burroughs, that's why the cave is called Burroughs Cave. And he brought some of the stones, some of the material to museums, but they immediately told him this is a hoax. So finally, he took out thousands of these stones and he sold them to friends and other people. The for me interesting thing is, of course, the writing itself. And the second thing is that you have stones with Black African, for example. You have stones with Mongolians, like this one. So you can see on the Burroughs Cave stones all people from all over the world from the past. So that means the persons who did these stones, they must have had a global connection. Otherwise, they would not be able to make portraits of persons from worldwide different people, tribes, or civilizations.
Wow.
This is also one of the most interesting places, and Wayne May, the publisher of Ancient American Magazine, he is doing the researches of Burroughs Cave. They did already, with allowance of the ground owner, they did some drills, and they could get the tunnel system. But whenever they did a drill, it was filled with water and earth. So that's impossible to do any excavation on these sites. So he gave up. But I informed him already that my friend did a scan over the Burroughs Cave area, and he could even show me exactly where there is water inside, and it's only a small part of the huge tunnel system is underwater. The rest is still dry, and hopefully Wayne May will continue, because what Russell Burroughs wrote in his book about Burroughs Cave, what he found is golden sarcophagus inside this, and he also described overman-sized statues with precious stones. And on our scan, we could see that there is gold inside, and there are also precious stones inside. So that means he was right when he explained. But then the next question is, who made this underground tunnel system? Who brought golden sarcophagus inside? So that's the next question which will appear. But for me, most interesting is that he described that there are hundreds of papyrus rolls inside also, and that would be very, very interesting to do a documentation about all these pieces in there.
I know Illinois is an incredibly fascinating place. You know, there's a lot of anomalies around there. I mean, I'm going to talk about the next piece, and Michael Cremo's turned up a lot of stuff and artifacts from Illinois, one being a coin. I think it was found deep down. A megalithic wall found inside of a coal chamber as well. And the next artifact we're going to talk about, Klaus, is a good representation of this, what we're talking about, where you find artifacts found in coal.
Yes, this was found, this was made by the Creation Evidence Museum, where the original iron cup is on display. I had it here in Austria for the exhibition 2001, the original. And 1912, a coal miner found in a huge block of coal, when he broke the block, he found an iron cup inside. And when we had the iron cup here in Vienna, we could see exactly that the compression of the petrification of the coal even was leaving some prints inside the iron cup. So that means an iron cup in a coal, which
millions of years for coal to form.
Millions of years, approximately at least 65 million years. This kind of coal in this area is age-dated by the geologists. So that's very good, one of the very good things. Michael Cremo was in Vienna for the opening 2001.
Wow. Lovely.
And he said, I'm happy that I can see some of the originals, which I described already in my books. One of them was the iron cup. So,
I mean,
65 million years, if the age dating from the geologists is correct, 65 million years, an iron cup, the big question is, who lived on Earth 65 million years?
Making iron.
Because that's the time approximately when the dinosaurs disappeared.
Do we know anything about the iron? Its iron content, is it pure iron, or percentage of iron, or there's different grades of iron?
They did some checks of the iron. I don't have it here, but I will ask Dr. Bo.
Of course, there's a lot of artifacts that Michael will talk about, and that's probably why Michael was there. I mean, he's found gold chains as well in iron as well. And I think it's one of the most exciting, because it's extreme antiquity. We're talking extreme antiquity, which smashes all records. I mean, some people concentrate, Klaus, fair enough, on the 10,000 BC date and say Ice Age and where we were around then being civilized, but like you say, there is artifacts saying, you know, many thousands.
Again, if we talk about really old human existence, Colombia again, there is a place called Villa de Leyva. In this area you find millions of fossils, dinosaurs, eggs, and so on. What they found there is a stone, a piece of stone, and in this stone, a petrified skeleton human hand and a petrified skeleton human foot. And in the same area, they found petrified, cultivated fruits and vegetables. And age dating of the rock formation, of this rock formation where the skeleton pieces are petrified inside, by geologists is approximately 120 to 140 million years. So we are talking really about human lived already long time before.
Of course, the cultivation implies somebody was farming or...
Who could you have their petrified banana, cocoa beans, you have avocado, you have pineapple. And that's all not wild, it's all cultivated, petrified. So, and next question, but if people ask me, why do you think the science cannot accept these things? I said, because it would be too difficult to explain a missing link of, let's say, 50 million or 100 million years. What was in between? We even don't know exactly what happened before 6,000 years. So how can we talk about 65 million years or something like this? I mean, that would be too difficult. But for me, it would be one of the explanation could be that we had already several times global catastrophes on Earth, and just a few people might have survived in very high area, like the Andes, like the highland of Mexico or Tibet, Himalaya, this area.
Starting over again.
But if some people survive in a global catastrophe, for generations and generations, they would have only one problem: where do I find food for my family? So that means nothing would be like before, and everything would start from the beginning. And what would be still in common? That's the so-called mythology or legends. And I personally think all of these legends have a very, very big percentage of reality. We just have to go more behind it. And let's talk about the giants. There is no country, no tribe, no civilization on Earth which does not have the legends about the giants and little people.
Wow, for sure. Klaus, I really thank you for your time today. Before we go, I want you to show a copy of your DVD one more time, and you can give out your website.
This is the DVD which you can get on Amazon. It's called Klaus Dona Chronicles, and my website is www.unsolved-mysteries.com. And James, I think if many more people are researching on the past, maybe we can find out a lot what we could learn from the past. And what we should do better in the future, because if we continue our lifestyle, we destroy ourselves.
It's a nice way to finish the note. I think, yeah, if everybody can get out and do some research and get involved and explore, the world, there's plenty still there to discover, Klaus.
And I love to give informations, but because that's the only way to get informations, give and take.
Give and take.
So for any information, I'm very thankful.
Wow. Thank you for your time today, Klaus. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, James. It was great talking to you.
You too, brother. Hi, Klaus. Here we are outside the Imperial Palace, home of some of the most awesome treasures I've ever seen. Can you tell people what's inside, a little bit about this place, a little bit about the House of Habsburg, and why people should come to Vienna to see this place?
The whole Hofburg keeps many of the most famous museums, and for me also one of the most interesting places is the treasure room of the House of Habsburg, where they keep all the treasures, like the crowns and all the ingredients from the House of Habsburg, and it's just amazing. You have to come and see it by yourself, then you know what I say.
Tell us a little bit about the House of Habsburg, Klaus. Are they still here around today? There's still remnants of them in Europe. They got kind of disbanded in the World War I.
Yeah, after World War One, the Habsburg Empire was broken, so all the different kingdoms of the House of Habsburg were separated into Czech Republic, Hungary, and all the others. And still members of the House of Habsburg are living in Austria. The historian of the family, the great-grandson of the famous Emperor Franz Joseph I and Elizabeth, so-called Sissi, Archduke Michael, he went with me for the opening of the Habsburg exhibition, which I did 1992 in Tokyo, and it was a great success, and we are, from that time on, we are very good friends. Wow.
And Klaus, tell us a little bit, some of the garments that they have inside have gold embroidery, such exquisite. They still use these, the Habsburgs would still use these today?
No, only the golden fleece, which are also presented here. They are used every year at the special meeting of the Order of the Knights of the Golden Fleece.
Wow. And for you, what's your favorite piece inside, Klaus?
The imperial crown.
The imperial crown.
The most impressive one, and also for me interesting is the spear of
the Holy Lance, the Spear of Destiny, as they call it.
The Spear of Destiny, but it is not the original, because the director of this place, the former director, Dr. Rudolf Distelberger, was a very good friend of mine, and he did excellent research on it, and he said that this cannot be a Roman spear, so it cannot be the original Spear of Destiny.
Wow, because there were several copies in around 5th, 6th century, so there was, they're not necessarily fakes, they're old, they're very, very old.
They are very old,
but they're just not the original. Just tell us, you touched on the Roman, tell us a little bit about the Roman history of Austria, something I wasn't aware till I came to Vienna. So
approximately a little bit more than 2,000 years ago, the Roman came here to Vienna. The place here was called Vindobona, and it was a very big military area here of the Roman Empire. And really? They also brought the wine to Austria, and now Austria is very famous for its very good red and white wine.
They ruled the Roman Empire from this part of the Danube?
No, it was the final destination to the east and to the north for a long time here. That's why they had a big military area here.
Wow. Well, thank you for your time, Klaus, and explaining how to come to Vienna and why to come to Vienna.
Please come and see it by yourself. You will love it.
Well, thank you, brother.
From museums, and a friend of mine, a museum director, he wrote landing requests to all these museums worldwide, and out of 356 requests we got only one agreement to be able to get this artifact for the exhibition. Then we started to do our research by ourselves. We traveled to South America, to Mexico, to North America, in Europe, and finally in 1.5 years we could find 470 very, very strange artifacts which we showed to the public in 2001 in the exhibition Unsolved Mysteries in Vienna.
Wow.
And since that, while researching, I had so many very, very strange, sometimes mysterious experiences that I got more and more into these fields, and since 2001 I found many, many more interesting places, interesting artifacts worldwide, and the search still is going on, and the more we find, the more answers, the more questions are rising up. Our history.
Do you find more research that you do as more time goes on, the more people come forward and they bring attention to you, different artifacts and different information that you wouldn't be aware of?
Yes.
The plot thickens, as they say.
Yes.
Okay, so you've gone from Japan, Ecuador, Bolivia, you've concentrated in these areas. We're going to get into some of that information because this is important. There's many mysteries there, Klaus. I wanted to talk about, you have also a new technology that you use. This is very interesting. We've spoke a few times about this, but for the listeners, I know there's some of information you're not going to be able to give away, but industrial secrets, as they say. But,
yes.
But tell us a little bit what the technology can do, the benefits of archaeology, really. That's what I'm trying to enlighten to the public.
A friend of mine invented our tunnel systems inside. There is also, in the center of this pyramid, there is also one room we could show to Professor Samuel Manakic, and we also could detect that there are bones and precious metals inside. So I think in this case it should be a grave or a tomb inside this Sun pyramid. In the future, I asked my friend already to do scan over the other pyramids in Visoko, and I think that there are even connections between those pyramids, and if we can help Professor Samuel Manakic, we will do so. So when Stephen and Evan Strong saw my interview and that we were using a new technology, they contacted me and they asked me if we could do them a favor and check the area around the hieroglyphs in Australia. which we did, and we sent them a scan showing them that far behind the hieroglyphs there is a tunnel going into the direction of the hieroglyphs, and close before the hieroglyphs there is a room, and also in this room we detected bones and precious metal. So that when I sent them the scan, they went there the following weekend and they found a man-made wall and also an entrance into a tunnel, and definitely on the photos they sent me you can see that this is a man-made tunnel, but after a few meters it's blocked by man-made stone blocks, and I think that might be a former grave robbery trap which was activated because in 1976 especially in this area, there was a very heavy earthquake. And I think this was the reason why the blocks are now blocking the entrance to the grave. But hopefully they will get the official authorization to open it, and then they could prove that the Egyptian hieroglyphs are definitely original and not a hoax from end of 19th century.
Sure. You're describing a very powerful technique, Klaus, when you can scan with a high technology and then send somebody to look, and then they come up with some answers or the evidence of what you're showing them. This is a powerful tool.
It's a very powerful tool, and we showed Stephen and Evan also an underground destroyed city, which is approximately 5 to 6 meters under the ground, under the survey. So,
wow,
a big city.
Interesting times too.
Oh, it's very interesting, and I hope they will be successful in excavating some of these places.
So, Klaus, while we're talking on technology, and I'll get to the artifacts, but while we're talking on technology, let's talk some dating techniques, because I got no problem with carbon dating. However, you usually find the carbon dating is being abused, or what I'm saying is they'll sometimes dig up a vessel and they'll look for carbon dating of material, but that doesn't mean that the artifact where the carbon dating was found was carved at the time it was dated to being buried. It could have been in existence for, especially with stone stuff. So the carbon dating is kind of used for dating techniques. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, this is a big problem in age dating. For example, one very good example for me are the Nuriages, the stone towers in Sardinia. There are over 6,000 huge stone towers, and the age dating by the official archaeologists is approximately 2,400 years. But they even found one so-called giant tomb a few meters under the sea level. That means for me, the age dating of the Sardinian Nuriages are completely wrong. Maybe they found one day some broken ceramics inside of one of these towers. They did an age dating. They found out that this material
You're very welcome to Capricorn TV. Here we are in lovely Vienna. Very welcome to the show.
Welcome to you, James. Nice to have you here in Wien.
Wow, Klaus, it's a pleasure to be here. You've been on Capricorn Radio a few times. We're doing a Capricorn TV interview today. We're going to talk about some of the artifacts on the table. We're going to get into some of your background and what you do, basically. And I've been intrigued to come here to meet you, Klaus. I never thought Austria would be so beautiful. This place is full of history, Klaus. It's so, you know, from the Romans onwards, like, I mean, everybody has come through the Danube here to Austria and Vienna. And I guess you've been a passionate guy for history for a long time, Klaus. Let us know who you are, where you come from in terms of history and your cultural exhibitions that you've been putting on around the world. Build a picture for the audience.
My name is Klaus Dona. I did many big cultural exhibitions from Austria to Japan, also one to Korea, and several Japanese exhibitions in Vienna. And on my long trips, I had a lot of time to read on the airplanes, airports, and even in the hotel rooms.
Sure.
And I read a lot of books about unexplainable things and out-of-place artifacts. And one day I had the idea, I was a big skeptic, and still I'm a skeptic, and you must be skeptical. I had the idea, why not trying to get some of these unexplainable artifacts to Vienna and display them on an exhibition. Then I started with my friend Reinhard Habeck, 1997. We did research, and we could find around 350 artifacts which are displayed or in museums, because we just wanted to have artifacts. Several years ago, a new technology which makes him able to scan any place worldwide for archaeological sites or archaeological places. And we found already many of them, and I hope that we can be accepted by the official science, because I'm quite sure we could help the international archaeologists a lot to find really unknown cities, unknown places, and unknown archaeological sites.
Of course, places like Iraq and Egypt are covered in desert sands, and they weren't at one point. They were vibrant cities all across the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Nile. Of course, places are buried in the sand. The benefit of this technology would be perfect, really, for...
Oh, we have already several very interesting looking sites in Egypt, also in Libya, but also in several other countries.
I think Gilgamesh, the body of Gilgamesh in Egypt or in Iraq, they were searching with a new technology there because there's some sort of an iron compound that they use as well. So there's new technologies that are abound. Okay, so Stephen and Evan Strong, you've also helped use this. I have to mention these guys because this is how we got in contact. These guys have been using this technology too, and you've brought some interesting sites. There is some hard stuff there like glyphs and rock art, but there is also stuff that you've used with the technology. And the guys would have been clueless, never heard about this at all, until this technology has been used for that.
Yes, they contacted me because they saw an interview which I did in Visoko at the site of the Bosnian pyramids, and we did a scan over the so-called Sun Pyramid in Visoko, and we could show Professor Samos Managic that there are many tunnels inside this. For the official science, still it's just a mountain. For us, at least,